what you gotta do. Think happy thoughts, and the smile will come back.
Welcome, happy Thursday. It is time for this week's Think Happy Thoughts, and I am excited and a little concerned to bring this happy thought to everybody. It's been an interesting week here around because things are starting to talk about opening back up, and things are starting to progress like they want to open up, yet there's still a whole lot of discussion and disagreement even about whether it's a good time to open up or whether we should be opening up, or all the stuff that people argue about constantly that you can read on Facebook if you'd like, trying to get the facts to it, trying to understand what the medical experts are saying on one side and trying to understand what the economic experts are saying, and really just a fun, not so much fun, time, definitely a time, of trying to put together the next steps of our lives if we are to get out of this pandemic this week and coming weeks. So I just had some few thoughts today and a story that I hope you'll like, and we'll get through that together. It's going to be a fun story. It's time to think our happy thought. Okay, so for today's story, going along with our happy thought, I'm going to go back to a very older time, back to 1993. It was my senior year of high school. The situation arose where I became injured, and I take almost zero responsibility for this injury. I blame it all on Melissa Bailey, whose picture I'm sure you'll see. She had a 1979 Toyota Celica, and it was an old car, and I was very good friends with Melissa my senior year of high school. We were very, very close, very good friends. We drove everywhere, did everything, left school, very good friends, and very still would consider her a friend of mine, although she lives in a completely different part of the country. But the story here would help us go. It's just it's a story about decision making, and so anyway. She had the 1979 Toyota Celica. We would ride around on it. It was a stick shift. She got her license before me, so I rode with her more often. She apparently had more gas money than I did, so I rode with her more often. I was probably a cheapskate when she wasn't, so I rode with her more often. But anyway, or maybe she was terrified of riding with me. I never thought of that. But anyway, none of that really matters for our story. But this is a story about decision making. And so Melissa and I, we needed to go. She was in the pom team, and I was not. Let's be clear about that. I was not on the pom-pom squad. Melissa, though, was, and I believe she was the captain our senior year of high school. But she had to go pick up something at another pom girl's house, and this girl's name was Randy Greenspan. Another wonderful girl I remember very fondly from high school. Very friendly, just a super sweet girl. And this is, of course, of no fault of hers, for the most part. She did have that mailbox there. But anyway, so Randy Greenspan had a driveway at her house that sat on a pitch kind of like about like this. And it was a tight pitch. It was a high pitch. So Melissa and I stopped in her driveway, and she parks the car and doesn't put it in the emergency brake in. Instead, she just leaves it in gear, which is suitable, especially for an older car. I think that people did that. I don't know why. Maybe the emergency brake didn't work. I don't know what the deal was. Whether maybe she wanted to kill me. I don't know. But she puts the car there, and I'm sitting in the hill, and I'm getting ready to get out, and she had left her lights on. Our first bad decision. Actually, the first bad decision was getting in the car to begin with. Next bad decision was she left the lights on. She said, as I'm getting out of the car, I have my door open. She says, Jerry, can you please, turn off the lights for me? And so I went to turn off the lights, and I bumped it out of gear. And of course, when you bump it out of gear, and the emergency brake either doesn't work, or it doesn't, it either doesn't work, or it's not on, and you're on a pitch like that, your car tends to go backwards. And so as I was doing that, and you'll see here my illustration in my fun chair, the car started going backwards rather quickly down said hill. And I'm going to do this in slow motion because I don't have a lot of room here, and when I crash things, they break. And so in my superhero mentality, my superhero ways of trying to save this car, as I look backwards and I see we are heading towards one of those giant green electrical boxes. You know, the kind where you all congregate as kids and you find your best rocks and you go there to show and tell your neighbors and your friends. And one of those big giant boxes that I'm guessing explode if hit by a half a ton of car. But I was not about to find out that. So in a superheroic effort, I stuck my foot out, trying to slow the car. And upon seeing that my foot was not strong enough to stop the car going so fast down this hill, I grabbed the steering wheel. And so I'm on the passenger side, foot stuck out the door, going towards the certain death of explosion. I turn the steering wheel, and immediately the car does this and starts heading right back towards the house at the bottom of the driveway and the mailbox. And so I am like stuck in here, my foot's still out the car door. I swing it around, and all of a sudden, a mailbox, which I think was there at the beginning, I'd be surprised if it was put there during this time because it didn't happen very long, comes up on a 4x4 post. It's got, your normal mailbox. It's got a plastic mailbox. And, of course, my foot gets slammed, snapped, just shut into the door between the door and the 4x4-inch post. And the plastic mailbox goes into my calf. Now, I know I'm made of cast iron. I know typically some have mentioned Greek God, but I won't go there. The mailbox was able to protrude into my leg. The mail post was able to smush my foot up against the door, removing all skin from it. And it was what they would say painful. So Randy and her mom and Melissa come back outside. Melissa's like, "What did you do to my car? I don't care about you. What's wrong with your car? What did you do to my car? You smashed it all up. Oh my gosh." Randy, of course, was, "Oh no, poor Jeremiah. You saw Melissa. How could you do this to him? This was obviously your fault and nobody else's." Melissa's and Randy's mom was like, "Oh no, what am I going to do? My mailbox. I put that there, and it never meant to kill him." Well, none of that, of course, really part happened, but I was there, obviously in pain, and so Melissa comes back outside, and the Greenspans come downstairs. She gets me a pack of ice, and Melissa's like, takes said pack of ice and shoves it right on that foot, which, I guess she had good intentions, but bad decisions. Because there's one thing that raw skin does, when the skin's been rubbed off and you've got a plastic bag of ice, especially really cold ice, it adheres to that raw part of the skin. And I didn't notice at the time. So she's driving me back to her parents' house, who didn't live far away. At this time, I had my dad called. He's on his way to pick me up from Melissa's house. And, of course, we get there. I get out of the car. Melissa's trying to be so wonderful and helpful, as she was. She grabs the ice, went to pull it off, and did not realize that it stuck to that raw flesh. And, of course, there's the once again, as Melissa has once again wounded me beyond words. And ripped the flesh again once from that raw spot. And I probably said, "Oh, it's okay, sweet. I have the patience of Jesus himself. It's no problem. Don't worry about it." And I was probably so focused on making sure she was okay that I cried. And it was not cry for my own pain. It was definitely crying for her, to be, not so hard on herself. I was, this kind of person I am. But long story short, I went to the hospital. I had a crush injury in my foot. They were able to clean up the wound where the plastic went in. And it wasn't all so bad. I had to be, on crutches for a while and stuff. But Melissa's car healed fine. Somehow, I guess if it was more of a modern Celica, it probably wouldn't have healed fine. But being the 1979 version, it healed fine. I remained friends with Melissa, even though she tried to kill me several times during that story. But there was a few things there decision-wise that would have changed the outcome of the story. And I'm going to go through just a few things here. If you will bear with me, there'll be a couple little edits and cuts because there's a few things that I want to kind of throw in here into our decision-making process. So let me fix my foot, get my chair out of the way, and I'll be right back in just a second. Okay. So as things start to maybe get back to normal, I guess my biggest concern is if we do it too early and we have to go back to quarantining each other. I don't know why I say quarantining each other. That's kind of a weird thing. I'm not making. That's more like kidnapping. But anyway, if we go back into quarantine to where we're really having to hanker down again like we were a few weeks ago, and this is not solved and it gets worse again, then we are putting ourselves in a whole lot worse situation, I think. That's my concern in the rush to reopen. Okay, and I think that's a lot of people's concerns, at least on Facebook. It's pretty much, right divided. Half the people want to open up immediately and talk about masks didn't help at all and the flu was worse. And I don't want to get into all that. I just want people to be safe. And I usually, for medical reasons, I listen to medical personalities. And of course, the biggest medical personality in is my wife. And she, thinks that we should remain until it's a little bit safer. She's out there on the front lines. She's out there dealing with it. So I tend to listen to her. She's also terrifying when angry. So I listen to her. Beautiful soul as that. But we're going to be stuck with making decisions. A lot of decisions here coming up. Decisions on whether or not we have church again. Decisions on whether or not how many people we let in church, or how we deal with, if we have to have multiple church services, how we deal with the cleaning of that in between. And we have just whether you should go to the restaurant, whether you should go to the salon, whether gyms should back open again. And I really, as you can tell, I really need that to happen. We have a lot of decisions to make. And it's just kind of a, not just for this thing, but it's kind of good to reflect on how to make good decisions in life. Maybe you're one person like my dad who always seems to make the right decision. I don't know how that is. He just always seems, if ever I don't know, or Carrie doesn't know, or my wife or my son doesn't know which decision, and I can't help them. That's immediately who we all think of asking about situations. So is my dad. And he always makes the right one somehow. I don't know how that works. He is a wise man, but both he and my mother are very good at making good decisions. So just going to go over a couple things. Is what biblical principle should I use to inform my decision? Okay, I'm just going to give a couple of these. I know not everybody that watches this is, all about the Bible and all that. But the Bible, even when you're not a Christian, even when you're not, somebody who considers yourself even a believer in God, you can find a lot of wisdom in the Bible. There's a reason it's the best-selling book of all time. There's a reason it's always been in a hotel room, in the drawer. There's a reason it's just continued to be a basic need for a human to come to for reference for all of time. So, at least in the last 2,000 years or so. But, okay, so what biblical principle should I use to inform my decision? And I just want to pull a scripture out here briefly. 1 Corinthians 10:31 says this: "So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all for the glory of God." How does this apply? Well, let's listen. I don't know. You're going to have to eat. You're going to have to drink. You're going to have to exercise. You're going to have to do stuff that we haven't been able to do because of the quarantine for a while now. And as you should put with anything, and any decision you make in your life, you should always be doing it for God's glory. That's an easy one, right? Maybe had Melissa been glorifying God and not glorifying her own Palm Squad needs, she would have not had. I'm just kidding, of course. I give Melissa a hard time about that. I have for years. She tried to kill me. And if you tried to kill me, I'd bring it up too. But just kidding. So number two, to make sure you have all the facts. In this case, I think this is a funny one, because we're living in a generation, a time, a moment in time where facts are not facts, and things that we think are facts are not facts, and things that should be facts you don't know are for facts because nobody's telling you the same story. It seems like everybody has their go-to list of facts, and they will take those facts and bring them out and ignore all the other stuff because it doesn't help their point. Whether it's because we are in a society that is led by the right and the left, politically, which again I'm not getting into. We have leftist news and rightist news. We have, Republican news, Democratic news, and nobody's giving the full story, it doesn't seem like. And, I've watched time and time again, whether I've watched, Fox say things about Trump that I'm like, that's not what he said. He said that in a lot negative more way than you want to put it. And CNN does the same thing with President Trump, where they're saying he said something that was really horrible, and it really wasn't in the intent that he did. And sometimes they both just out and out lie. I know some people may get angry that I said that, but it's the truth. Okay. Do we have all the facts? I would have loved to have had the fact that day in Melissa's car that the emergency brake wasn't either not on or not working. That would have been a fact I would have enjoyed having. Having driven a stick car, I would have known that. I also would have known the fact whether or not my foot was strong enough to stop a moving car. I assumed it was. I was, a strong kid. But anyway, so let's read Proverbs 18:17. The first to plead his case seems right until another comes and examines him. We had our governor, who I do love. I love Governor Hogan. Tell us here in Maryland that things are going to get back to normal a little bit. Still use caution. So that's kind of where we're headed on Friday, tomorrow. But I'm hoping he weighed all the other options. I'm hoping that he didn't just take what somebody else told him or what one other person told him. And I'm hoping he's going to different sources to try to figure out exactly what we should do and what the next steps are. But when we make decisions in our life, good or bad, we should always not just listen to what the first smart thing we hear is, to still go back and to try and disprove or reaffirm that said fact that we had. So, number 3. Okay, and here's one that's, I think, very pressing in what's going on right now. Is the pressure of the time forcing me to make a premature decision? I think this one probably hits right there, because we are at a time where people are protesting at malls and at the Capitol buildings, and people are forcing us almost to try to make a decision, forcing the governors or the powers that be to make decisions, or else we're going to riot. That type of mentality is not good or not conducive to good decision making. It's a reason that our country doesn't give in to terrorist threats and doesn't give in to their demands, is because the next one will come and do it. But we can't be forced to make a good decision, or decision at all, really. We have to not let the time of the pressure of time forcing me to make a premature decision. I hope that's not what we're doing. But let's read Proverbs 19:2. Also, it is not good for a person to be without knowledge, and he who makes haste with his feet errs. Right there. It's not good to be without knowledge. I'm hoping that our powers that be, are making decisions based not with haste in their feet, that they're slowing down, they're trying to get exactly who it is that should be making this decision, and all the aspects of them together. Okay, the fourth thing I'll talk about: what possible motives are driving my decision? Big one, especially with the economy. I think a lot of people are wanting to be, they're worried about their businesses, and they have rightfully so. Okay, I know of a lot of small businesses. I have friends with a lot of people who own small businesses, or even some larger businesses and restaurants and all the things. We want to open back up. We need to open back up. We need to move forward. Our economy is suffering. Yes, that might be true, and maybe that's the right decision. I don't have the decisions, the answers, but what I'm trying to apply here is a decision-making process that we should be making as we go through and start these things. But what possible motives are driving my decision? We cannot drive a decision just on our fears about money or our fears. We can't stay closed up and in quarantine just because we're afraid necessarily of catching the disease. We need to have our facts clear. We need to have both sides. And we need to make an informed decision based on prayer and thought and meditation or whatever you are talking about, and not just let the pressure of the situation, the motives of the situation, drive us. Proverbs 20 verse 9 says, Who can say, I have cleansed my heart, I am pure from sin? Obviously, making decisions is always a whole lot easier when you've given yourself to God. Even if you're not Christian, that you've just kind of given yourself up to the fact that you are not the all-knower and God is the all-knower, and kind of consorted him in our everyday decision-making. All the ways of man are clean in his own right. This is Proverbs 16:2. But the Lord weighs the motives. We might be trying so hard to do the right thing, but we don't always get that. We don't always understand. We're moved by emotion, where God knows the beginning, the end. He knows where we are on that infinite span of time, that infinite place of humanity that we are, that when he created us, it's an infinite situation, and we're only on this very small speck of time. And we have to trust him to help us make those decisions. Okay. Obviously, number 6, what is the collective counsel of my community? We do that. We look around. We want to talk to people, talk to doctors, talk to nurses, talk to people who know about what to inject and what not to. I'm just kidding about that. Talk to people who understand the ramifications of our decisions. And I hear it's crazy to hear that we're hearing people are talking about whether or not it's okay for some elderly to die if it means that the youngers, a lot of the younger people are able. I don't even understand what to think in that process. If you look at the elderly, especially in a Bible culture, some of the people that did the greatest things and made the biggest impact on humanity were the elderly. People who were beyond their time, or our whole Christian faith so much stems from Isaac, and Isaac, of course, the son of Abraham, who came to them late in life. We have to not discredit the ability or the need this country has for our elderly. And this is speaking for somebody whose grandmother died earlier in the month, later in April, early in this month, of this disease, of this coronavirus. So Proverbs 10:17 says this, and this is to number 7 that I've brought. Have I honestly considered the warning signs? Proverbs 10:17 says this: He who is on the path of life and heeds instruction, but he who forsakes reproof goes astray. We have to look at what we've actually seen as far as proof of what it goes. Not what we think might happen, not what we're afraid might happen, not what we want to happen. We need to go through and look for something that actually brings good proof. And that might mean that we stay kind of hidden and in our houses for a little bit longer. But again, I have no really chicken in the fight, dog in the fight, chicken in the fight. I don't know what kind of fighting it is. I have none of those. I'm just trying to give us some simple things to live by for this very Happy Thought Thursday. Okay, number 8, have I considered the possible outcomes for my course of action? Okay, Proverbs 14:1 says, the wise woman builds her house, but the foolish tears it down with her own hands. Okay, we've been building something with this. We have not just gone out and just been sitting around waiting. We've built this, almost a fortress from the disease. And, we spent so much time, with the quarantining, with the staying away, the painful times we've had staying away. I know that I've missed, my birthday was during this time, Easter during this time, which is just a huge thing, not just for me because I'm a Jesus follower, but Easter is a huge time for me because of my family. I love to visit with my family and eat and with my nieces and nephews, and I love to go and visit with my wife's family, my in-laws and stuff at that time that we didn't get to do this year. And so to go through my birthday, Easter, now Mother's Day, very rough for a lot of people. I know that my mom, not only was my mom lost her mother for this Mother's Day, she wasn't even able to get, a whole lot of love from her kids because we've been shut off from each other. And, we saw each other for a few minutes, and I know my sister visited and they saw for just a few minutes, but, it's been very, very difficult for me to not even to watch my mom and this time, to watch her cry, for her during the loss of her own mother, and for me not to be able to give her a hug to console her in the loss of her mother and my grandmother. So there's a whole lot we've built here. We've built a fortress, literally, from this disease. And in a lot of ways, by going back, we could be tearing down that fortress. We have things in place, and we've even gotten used to this way of life a little bit. And though I don't think it's a permanent way of life, I think we don't need to be so rash in deciding it's time to stop that way of life. It's time to tear down our fortress and just let everything back open again. And I know the government wants us to be, and they don't do it in phases. Everybody do it in phases. I'm going to be honest with you. One of my other biggest concerns, and it's embarrassing to talk about, my other biggest concerns in this whole thing is I have a trip upcoming to Disney World in November. And there's a certain phase that needs to come in the state of Florida for me to get back to that Disney trip, which you've already paid part of. We do it every year. I look very forward to it. I joke around sometimes with my family that I'm just living from Disney trip to Disney trip. And so I don't want to tear down our fortresses so quickly that we're having to go back to a worse place. And though I throw in the losing my Disney trip as a kind of a funny, coy way of saying it, I don't think we should be so hastily tearing down these fortresses. Okay, and here's another one, number 9. Could this decision jeopardize my integrity or hinder my witness for the Lord? All right, Proverbs 10:9. Who walks with integrity walks securely, but he who perverts his ways will be found out. Now, you might ask how this goes along. There's a certain way that some of us have carried out their lives, and not just their lives as far as what their actions have been, but what their words have been, and what their motives have been, and how they've talked to other people who not necessarily agree with them. And I'm guilty of it too. I sometimes would get on the case of those who think we should be locked up forever. You can't live in fear. You can't live in fear. As a Christian, we talk about, we are anti-fear as Christians. We fear the God and nothing else. And and then there's the other side where it's people just want to so blatantly open everything back up. And maybe I have not spoke as kindly to them as I should have. But in all of our ways, in all of our decisions, in everything we do, as far as dealing with these days and hopefully these ending days of this pandemic, I want us to treat each other with the respect and love and with the grace and integrity that God would want us to. I think that's important. I think that this has brought out the worst and the best in people. I think that I know that I have been so blessed by certain people's actions and how they've done this, and been able to stay in the middle. If you look at, I know that I don't want to get into advertising, and I know that most people aren't big into celebrities or whatever because they tend to disagree with them in political sense, and even in a Christian sense sometimes. John Krasinski's Some Good News show on YouTube. He's had 7 of those, 8 of those, and I've cried every one of them. He's been amazing to bring some good news, and then how he's used celebrity and other celebrity friends to bless normal people, whether it's been the online prom, the online graduation. He did a wedding online where the cast of Friends was at this wedding through a Zoom call. It's, I think we should all just find what we can do, find our place in making this a better situation than it is. And for those of you who've wanted to do things, the parades, the showing up, the teachers who have showed up outside the glass, it's amazing to see these things that people are doing. But don't ever let anything that whether it's you're making a decision to go on out, let it always be for the betterment of other people. And especially if you're a Christian, let it be with integrity, and don't ever let it hinder your witness for the Lord. So that's all I'm going to go through. There's one other scripture I want to read, and it's Proverbs 11:30. For the fruit of righteousness is a tree of life, and he who is wise wins souls. As a Jesus follower, my number one goal in life is to worship him. my number 2 goal into life is to bring other people to worship him. That's why I do this. That's why I do the things that I do. That's what I try to make be my most moving argument going forward, or my most passionate thing that I do. And I love sports, and I love friends. I love TV. I love movies. I love cinema. I love Disney. I love all these things. But when it comes down to it, your personal relationship with God, even if you're not a Christian, find God. I have a feeling that God will turn out to be one that would want you to be Christian, but I'm not. That's not for me to judge. I'll bring you to the foot of the cross. After you get there, God does what he wants with us once we get there. Grace before judgment is what my motto of my life. And the fruit of righteousness is the tree of life, and he who is wise wins souls. In making decisions, we always want to seem wise. It was not wise for me to stick my foot down. It was not wise for me to not pay attention to the hand grip, and it was not wise for me to blame Melissa for this, because it wasn't Melissa's fault at all. It wasn't anybody's fault at all but mine, and it was just dumb luck. But as in all dumb luck things, it seems like in my life, they live on in my memory so that I can bring them back and try to have a happier thought or a bigger need and use for it in my life. So I hope you've enjoyed this happy thought. We're going to be making some decisions. You're going to be making decisions this week of whether or not you open your business, you let yourself go to businesses that are open, whether you let your kids back to the playgrounds, whether you head yourself back to the gym in a couple weeks. Whatever it is, make wise decisions. Let God help you make wise decisions. Listen to people that he's put in authority over us. I'm one of those people who President Trump, yes, whatever, he's put there. I'm not going to get into all that. I listen to people in authority because that's what God does. God places those in authority over us. Better or worse, God places them in authority. So let's listen to those authorities, how they come out, and use that to help us make a good decision. And as always, on Thursdays especially, think happy thoughts. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you next week. Maybe in person before then. We'll see. I'm out.
When you're alone and feeling sad and you don't know what to do, when you can't sleep and feel lonely, here's just what you do.